Okay, let's get started. Esoteric languages. Announcements. You guys should sign up for TracerFire. That's the link. Yeah, if you guys haven't done it before, it's a forensics competition hosted by Sandia. It'll be on Saturday and Sunday, and they're gonna have food both days. And it's more of a forensics incident response simulation. So it's a little different than what we typically do, but it's a good time. I did it 2 years ago. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me now, or I guess after the meeting. And space is limited, so I would just sign up now. Yeah, and also have a good spring break, everyone. Here's the meeting flag. This is a brainfuck program. I'll talk about that a little bit later in the slides. Yeah. And when I was looking for the XKCD last year, I'm surprised I found such a relevant one. But yeah, except the only variable name is 6. Okay, so we'll talk about what an isolang is. Then Henry will give a few examples and some additional information about isolangs. Okay, so why do we make isolangs? I say it's because people have too much time on their hands. Henry says it's the highest form of programming arts. Who's right? You decide. Yeah, so it's a computer programming language that's designed to experiment with weird ideas, be hard to program in, or just as a joke rather than for practical use. So a couple things you should know about isolangs. The first isolang is intercal, which stands for compiler language with no pronounceable acronym. The most well-known isolang is brainfuck. It's a very simple programming language, just a couple operations. Move what cell you're in, decrement, increment, repeat. And Bafunge is another one that's quite popular. It's 2-dimensional. So then there's no longer left to right. The arrows will actually influence the direction of program flow. And depending on the character, like that pipe symbol you see at the bottom here, that can either keep going or go back down. There are a lot of isolangs. A little too many to cover, I would say. We'll cover the important ones. If you guys are curious, the list at isolangs.org is pretty funny to read through of all the ones that have been made. Yeah, Arch is the best. And Henry noticed that there are some very civil programming languages in here. 164 programming languages, very civil. Okay, and then last informational slide, that most of the isolangs are stack-based. So in traditional programming languages, you have access to memory alongside a stack. But for the purposes of isolangs, they're so simple that a lot of times they'll only use a stack. This means you don't have memory you can traditionally read or write to, and all operations are just on the stack. So a very simple example would be, you have x is 2 plus 3. You have some sort of operation that will pop off the top 3 values on the stack and leave the stack looking like this.
If you only have stack, you don't have heap overflow, like a safety feature.
It's true, safety feature. No heap vulnerabilities. This also makes it very easy to emulate. So if you're given an isolang, you can typically write a very simple Python implementation of the operations. Okay, and then the first example I want to cover is unary, which I thought was funny because it only uses 1 character. So this programming language, you only use the number 0, and you are able to actually represent any programming language. So no excuses if your keyboard's broken. You just start clicking away and you can program. Yeah. So this works by essentially taking brainfuck representation of the opcode, converting it to binary, then converting it again to unary, which is base 0. So it works out. It works out. Base 1.
This is like an hashing algorithm.
And yeah, on the notes for this page, they have a lot of issues of the technical limitations of reading this many bytes in makes it kind of hard to program in. But that was interesting. All right, now Henry's gonna do the rest.
Okay, let's see. This is arguably also
Oh, I have a
very.
question. Yes.
So if you have only zeros, like the only meaningful piece of information is the number of zeros.
That's correct. Yeah.
So like every different program has like a different, like a unique number of zeros.
Yeah. That's why Hello World has so many zeros, because the length is literally encoding the program itself.
This is arguably also very well-known etherling called JS-fuck. Similar to brainfuck, it is a subset of JS that only uses 6 characters. And apparently, you can do some JS magic to extract letters from these 2 strings, and you can get however many strings, however many features you like. And yeah, there is a convenient website to convert these code, which kind of defeats the purpose. It's supposed to be fun, but it's very handy to decode some of these obfuscated JS code. White space. Yes, this is just a blank document, except it uses space, tab, and line feed, these 3 unique operators. It's a common CTF language because this is a blank file. It appears to be a blank file, but it's not a blank file, and it actually can be interpreted. It's also stack-based. There are many operations, but for example, like the space is a push operation to push data onto the stack. Malbolge, classic. Designed to be impossible, or at least very hard to program. First program written by brute forcing a set of constraints. So these 3 Malbolge sometime, maybe. After each instruction runs a crazy operation, and it just changes the instruction set. And as you can see, the hello world, it looks kind of like gibberish. It is kind of gibberish, but these 3, anyone? Fiat. It's a 2D based programming language. Pixel difference correlates to opcode. And yes, I was not there when this event was run, so I was not familiar with this, but this looks like a classic fuck. Yeah, so apparently it automates reverse engineering peer programs, and you need trace execution and stuff and techniques. Do the challenge. This is Wenyan. So the alphabet only consists of traditional Chinese characters and these quotes, which do not appear in modern language, in any modern language, in fact. So yes, numbers and operators are all written in classical Chinese. For instance, this is 1. This is a variable name, I believe. And that means a list. I have a list. Yes. And apparently, because it's so compatible, because you can see it can be cross-translated in Ruby and Python, and it's mainly JavaScript-based, you can make a lot of stuff with it. Just like JS-fuck, JavaScript is an extremely versatile language, apparently. Yeah, but the documentation arguably is kind of lacking, so that might cause some difficulty, but overall, you can make some pretty competent program out of it. And yes, I do have an ESOLAN challenge. Go do that. That's definitely not going to cause headache, I promise. This is a hexagony. It has a 2D grid that has 6 sides, so hex. Yeah, these are the write-ups, color, and online interpreter, but honestly, because its code path execution is so complex, typically you can only trace it to see what it does. And as you can see, each of these operators indicates a single operation. Some of the operators might redirect the pointer. It's really like the program counter in a direction in different ways. So that can create these complex paths.
And there's a challenge up in hexagony called B as well.
Yep. It's not that bad, but you do have to really trace it. This is Weiwa, what It's also what we encountered in a CTF. It's a general purpose stack-based array-oriented programming language. This is copied from their website, but yeah, if you look at how crazy these operators are, these are basically glyphs of whatever the fuck that is. And they can use it to do many different operations. This is actually a GIF from the website. I can't copy it to the PowerPoint. That's an audio of a sine wave, I believe, and that's just an image. You can generate some pretty crazy stuff with it. It's like the ability without library far exceeds many languages I know. But yes, the programming aspect is pretty convoluted. And it runs from right to left, top to bottom, with only one precedence rule. So it's pretty straightforward to decode, but you really have to know what all the symbols mean. And yeah, additional information. So how do you identify an ESO-lang? It is pretty hard, to be honest. Now that we have ChatGPT, maybe it can be of some use, but again, with so many niche ESO-langs, so many really ESO-langs that with no practical use, it's pretty hard. You can do Google, you can do ChatGPT, you can describe some features to it, maybe in hopes that it can find it. And yeah, so but there are only so many that are popular and are in use. So you can really try to see the popular ones online and to find what you're looking at. And obviously the holy grail of archive. There you go. This is our meeting challenge. You can identify this. I'll give you guys a moment to just stare at it and see what happens.
Has anyone seen this programming language before?
Yes, I forgot what it's called.
What's tipping you off?
I could have sworn there was one of these that is a set of macros for C++.
Okay.
You know, actually, before this meeting, I contemplated of whether to put cursed C in, but because I can't find the code base of it, I couldn't. But on GitHub, there's a cursed repository called cursed C.
Yeah, I know there's one of them that aliases every single thing in the entire language to something else.
Holy shit.
Like, I believe including like brackets and stuff.
I believe this is a full ESO-lang. It's not translated into C.
Okay, click the next slide.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't already,
Oh shit.
you can look up the high 1.3 in Google,
Yeah.
and it should point you in the right direction. This is sort of like a ESO-lang identification test, and solve for points. 50 free points if you look it up. Libraries, that's insane.
Give them a moment. Oh, do I?
No, it's
Okay, so as I previously mentioned, they're the highest form of programming arts. Therefore, I made this my interpretations of ESO-lang. Because as you can see, it has two axes. How esoteric it looks, how weird it looks, and how it behaves. Like JavaScript, it doesn't look very weird, but it behaves very weird. So it's
So true.
so it technically counts as an ESO-lang. And yes, you can all of these are Turing complete. So a lot of these ESO-langs are really Turing complete. So they're functional. They're not just for fun. You can actually program stuff out of them. Like Python Pickle, for example. Remember that challenge that we did? It's very fun. It's stack-based. It's actually a language. And PowerPoint and Excel. Someone made a 8-bit or 16-bit computer out of that. It can be used. And of course, we have the ultimate computing power of human civilization, maybe a 4D or 5D civilization somewhere out there that's observing the Earth and use it as a computation power, because collectively, humans' behavior can be identified and modeled using statistical models. Just a thought. So what is the conclusion from this chart? Everything can be an ESO-N if you try hard enough.
Even me.
And yes,
Even you, Emma.
I mean, yeah, because if you think about it, I was even thinking about making a biology related ESO-N challenge. Because if you think about it, you have these DNA, which is consists of ACGT, and you have these maybe RNA enzymes, and you combine them together, and they can make some sort of protein,
Fair.
you know?
Huge.
Could be you.
And yeah, so next week, obviously spring break, but next Monday, we'll have I guess we organized a beginner crypto CTF.
So it'll be a very beginner crypto CTF. First prize is $100 Amazon, $50 Amazon gift card. Yeah, there'll be Papa John's at the event. Yeah, it'll be like, your basic classical cryptography challenges, and we'll throw in 1 or 2 harder challenges so that you guys don't sweep the leaderboard, please. It's okay if you do.
Can we just like participate and get invisible scores?
No, we have like a separate category
Oh,
for
okay.
Reese's members.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, come out, Papa John's, prize money.
Yeah.
So this is the Monday right after break.
Which I hope everyone is not too tired.
Get back into school with the CTF.
And of course, we have the Tracer Fire, and next Thursday, we're going to talk about block and stream ciphers with Secnic. And that'll be it. Remember, everything can be a ESO-N if you try hard enough. That's the one philosophy that I want everyone to take away from this meeting. Thank you, guys.